Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Dorma. This is their part number PS501. This is a power supply, is what it is. Weighs 10.35 pounds, so it's pretty heavy for a power supply. Albeit it's pretty heavy for a compact power supply. So this is a 24 volt 4 amp power supply is what it is. 120 volt AC coming in, 24 volt coming out, 4 amps. Let's open up that cover. Let's take a closer look at what's inside of here. Okay, so it's a pretty simple and straightforward type of power supply. What this has is it has two outputs, A and B outputs. Then it has two sets of inputs as well. So you see an A and a B output. You've got your positive and negative wires for each of those two outputs. But then you can see that there are 8 terminals there. I'm going to put that down, 10.35 pounds. On those 8 terminals, you have one pair of wet for output A, one pair of dry for output A, one pair of wet for output B, one pair of dry for output B. The dry contacts versus wet contacts will have voltage present, and if you have something like a keypad that you need to power, as well as get it to operate, control work as a switch, obviously, it might be very appropriate to have a wet contact installation. It will save you the trouble of having to run power to it because the voltage is present on those contacts. So underneath the lid, they give you a quick definition as to what the different wiring would look like based on the different outputs and modes that you would want to operate. So what this can do is be set up in 2 different modes. The 2 different modes will allow you to have either, it's in the installation instructions, which we'll go over, it will allow you to have, I don't want to get it wrong, so I'll quote it literally, mode 1, outputs A and B operate from input A or B. Okay, so you can have something operating, you could have both of your outputs being controlled by a single input, is what that means. In that mode 1, you'll have a time delay of 0.5 second after the first device fires. And what that means is if you're firing a couple of devices, you don't want to have them both activate at the same instantaneous time, because that inrush demand for power from the device would technically overwhelm the power supply. So they stagger that by that half second. That would be a pretty typical way to do that. Mode 2 means that when you're operating in mode 2, and it's set via dip switches, which I'll show you, output A is governed by input A, output B is governed by input B. Okay, so you can have, obviously, a door where you've got card access on the outside, something on the inside, a key switch, let's say, whatever you're powering. And then again, that is governed by these dip switches. And they're set right now, I believe, for mode 2 is how that they're set. Because dip switch 1 and 2, they're literally right here. Dip switch 1 and 2 are set in the off position, and 3 is set in the on position. And that would be mode 2. So, now let's take a couple of basic dimensional properties of this item. Okay. Overall width, about 8 1/4. Overall height, closer to about 8 1/2. It has an overall depth of about 4 3/8. 8 1/4, 8 1/2, 4 3/8 is what that looks like. Lots of punch outs all the way around, depending on where you're bringing the conduit to power this. Okay, this will ship from the factory with a screw that's going to hold that cover on. It includes a single option board here, and that's where the inputs and outputs are all going to be connected to. Obviously right here, that's your option board. A second option board can be installed in this area so that you can literally double the capacity of what it is that you're working on. So let's put this aside. Let's switch to the screen view now, and let's take a closer look at the supporting information. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, here's the item that we are looking at, and we have some photographs linked to down below. Let's take a closer look at those now. There's the label, and in its box, the PS501. Okay, so here is our option board here. That second one can be installed right here. That's called the ES2. We'll go over that in a moment. Your transformer, your fuse, 4 amp 250 volt slow acting fuse. There's slow acting and fast acting. Slow acting is more appropriate for a power supply because it will allow you to ride out or weather through a very momentary sort of aberration when it comes to power. Then underneath the cover, and this will be in the installation instructions, but on the ES board itself, right here, okay, right there, when dip switch 1 and 2 are off, they'll always be in the off position when you are dealing with exit devices. You can then govern whether you're in mode 1 or 2. Mode 1, output A and B operate from input A. Mode 2, A operates from A, B operates from B. If you're doing magnetic locks, you're going to throw dip switches 1 and possibly 2 to the on position, because that's going to change the fact that you don't need to stagger that inrush of what you would have from an exit device. There would be no reason to have that functionality when it comes to magnetic locks. Looking at the quick startup sheet, so to speak, underneath the cover, you can see how they have in input A and input B, you've got your wet contacts here. Okay, the installation instructions will tell us that whatever you're powering through there will be between 12 and 24 volt. It literally tells you 24 volt here. So again, if you have a keypad is a switch, but it also is a load in the sense that it requires power. You know, a card reader, a proximity reader, a keypad, those all require power. So you could power those from your wet contacts. Now, if you're installing something that does not take power, like just a mechanical key switch, or for that matter, a door position switch, whatever you might be doing with this material, you would wire that to the dry contacts, because no voltage needs to be present to power that other switch, and they're just showing it to you wired in this way. The installation instructions will show us what magnetic locks look like, but they're going to be wired just like these exit devices that they have shown here as well. So we've covered almost everything. There is a potentiometer that's here to the right of the outputs, and it's a small little turn dial, adjustable from 0 to 4 minutes. I don't know what it comes from the factory set to. I guess it would be between 10 and 20 seconds would be my guess. So I'd probably expect it to operate that way, but you'll need to adjust it to suit your requirements, possibly. That covers everything else that's here. Your outputs, your time delay, your potentiometer, it's a volume knob basically, your 4 pair of inputs, wet for A, dry for A, wet for B, dry for B, your dip switches. Okay. Now, what I've not shown you is the incoming power. Black, you've got hot, neutral, and ground. So you're going to bring your incoming power, your 120 volt, right to here. Obviously your fuse. Just a close-up view of the underside of the lid, and then the box itself. little closer view of that board showing you those primary components. Your transformer, back side of the box. Mounting is going to require that this plate come off or be moved so you can get access to the screw that's back here. That's going to be pretty simple. Yeah, it looks like there are 3 screws that you'll have to move. 2 here, and then there's going to be 1 up here, which ought to be this screw right here. Okay? Then you'll have access to the mounting holes. Fasteners are not included with this, by the way. Okay, let's switch now to the manufacturer's installation instructions, and we'll just go through it briefly to touch on the points that I've likely forgotten. This is a continuous duty 24-volt DC power supply. You can operate 2 of their 9000 series exit devices or 4 magnetic locks right out of the box. If you want to add the optional second card, you're going to double all that. You know, a pair of doors with electric latch retraction on both doors, and then you have then a pair of them. You can power up to 8 magnetic locks on this as well. The downside of having one power supply that will govern so many magnetic locks is that if one power supply goes out, then you have many doors that go out. If you have individual power supplies for each opening, which the downside of that is the cost. The upside, though, is that if one power supply goes down, only that door goes down. Built-in time delay from 0 to 5 minutes, so it said 4 minutes earlier on the underside of the lid. 110-volt input. There's a 1-amp circuit breaker, 1 dry contact, and 1 wet contact, 12 to 24 volt for each output. Output A, output B. That output is 24 volts and 4 amp. Solenoid inrush, 14 to 18 amps for 1/5 of a second, and then 1 amp holding power after that. And then you can power your magnetic locks continuously between 24 and 32 volts until the input contacts are activated, meaning you've effected a change on the switch. This voltage range would be typical, and they're just telling you that this would be considered a normal range. Recommended wire size is 18 gauge. They have the wire run chart here. This is the wire gauge that you're going to use depending on how far away your power supply and your load is going to be from each other. Generally, the power supply is mounted up in the plenum or above the doorway. So 18 gauge should be fine. You'll be well within 25 feet. However, if you have to go further, you're going to need to increase the wire gauge, making it a thicker wire, which serves to reduce the impedance that the wire would have when it comes to voltage drop. You'll lose less voltage with a thicker wire. Okay, now, maximum distance is 100 feet when you're using 12 gauge wire, which is the maximum wire diameter it will accept. 2 output modes, as we've discussed. Mode 1 is where outputs A and B operate from A or B. So 1 through 4 is A, 5 through 8 is B, A and B. Mode 2, output A operates from A and B operates from B. Okay, makes sense. You want to have independent control over something rather than staggering them. If you've got a single door that you're probably running 2 exit devices off of. Mounting the power supply again, pulling those screws out is how that's going to work. AC power, installing it down to the barrier strip. The wires are there and they're black, white, and green. Ensure the breaker is open. Use wires suitable for at least 90 degrees Celsius. What they're saying is ensure the breaker is open. Make sure that when you're connecting this, that the wires you're connecting to the power supply are not live. Setting the input mode, which we've talked about. Mode 1, place dip switch in the 3 in the off position. For mode 2, put it in the on position. It's currently set for mode 2. Each output has 2 inputs, one dry that actuates output and one wet contact that actuates output. We've talked about that. Defines those inputs. This talks about, and it is on the underside of the cover as well, if you're running electric latch retraction exit devices, dip switch 1 and 2 will be off. If you're running magnetic locks and do not need that half of a second delay, you'll put them to the on position. That's shown there. These are all in the off position right now. So here they go, showing the wiring of this material. It's pretty easy on your exit device. There's just power. This exit device isn't, they're not showing any sort of monitoring, request to exit, latch bolt monitoring, electric cylinder dogging, things of that nature. Showing how to connect magnetic locks. Okay. A combination of magnetic locks and an exit device, shown here. Going to want to set that mode correctly, depending on the output. Setting the delay for the relock, 0 to 5 seconds. Adjust potentiometer as shown, clockwise to increase time delay, counterclockwise to decrease. It's stuck right in there. Again, I don't know what it's set to currently. Checking function. Close the AC breaker means bring power live to the power supply. And check for proper operation is the bottom line. If you're going to install that second card, obviously disconnect the power. And you'll install it with the included screws as they're showing here. That's it. That's the installation instructions. There's also a product brochure that's down below. It's a 52-page document that will go over all things electronic access control components from Dorma. Very handy document that will allow you to review components that they have. Time delay, a 4-station control relay module, lots of things that you could use this for, man traps, interlocks, things of that nature. A fused terminal board, other power supplies, electric strikes will be in here, magnetic door holders will be in here, electromagnetic door locks will be in here as well. So I would suggest that you review this document. It's handy to look at an overview of all of their electrified hardware. Key switches, accessories like annunciators, horns, strobes, keypad. Okay. Mechanical switch bar. There'll be a micro switch inside of here. That would be very appropriate for opening the circuit to an electromagnetic lock, as they're showing here. Accessory hardware, transfer transfer hardware, intermediate pivot, top pivot. This is a item that is mortised into the edge of the door and the rabbet of the frame to give you a very concealed way to run wires. Surface-mounted, what they call armored door loops, an inexpensive way to do it. Power transfer hinges are here, different functions of that material as well. Accessories, an electronic programmer. You can set your power based on day of the week, time of day, things of that nature. Another timer. A timer would be pretty important for magnetic locks. I like to, suggest setting the timer so that the door can get to the closed position and then have it re-energized rather than it being energized when the door comes to the closed position. You hear a loud clanking sound when the armature and the face of the magnetic lock make contact. Consoles, these are just a way to report back to a central monitoring station what's happening over, your door. Is it open? Is it closed? Has someone hit the request to exit switch? Has the latch bolt been tampered with? Things of that nature. Door position switches, on-off switch, remote push button. These strikes are monitor strikes. This is going to tell you whether or not that latch bolt is present. So someone could Lloyd, L-O-I-D, Lloyd the latch to open up a lock set. So you could have an electric lock, and when power is applied, it will allow you to rotate the trim. Well, that's fine. But if you want to get out without being detected, let's assume that on the inside there's a request to exit switch that is writing back to access control. If you don't rotate that lever, you won't be writing back to access control. But if you were to Lloyd that latch and pull it back, you'd be able to exit without access control knowing possibly that you've exited. Well, when you have these monitor strikes, these will detect the presence of the latch bolt. So when that latch bolt is pulled back, it's going to write back to access control. Lots of ways to monitor. You can monitor the presence of the latch bolt. You can monitor whether or not the latch bolt has been pulled back. That has its own monitoring switch. You can monitor the trim itself. So monitoring is a very important aspect, and it needs to be thought through just to simply make sure that someone can't bypass your system, is the bottom line. Then there's also a document here that is called EAC Power Supply Requirements. It's a generic summary document that tells you what electrified access control you're working with and what sort of power supply and any notes associated with it. So if you're dealing with solenoid electric latch retraction 9000 series, yeah, you're going to need the PS501. And they're saying solenoid because these motorized latch retraction requires a lot less power, is the bottom line. So a very handy document. And there are, on the manufacturer's page in our site here, we click on that, you'll be able to pull up not only all of the Dorma products that we sell by means of this horizontal navigation here, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. The manufacturer's website is, you want local website, and then, let's see here now. I'm going to think door hardware. Yeah, electronic access control components. Power supply. Product downloads, but I don't see the PS501 here. Yeah, so let's just do a search. PS501. PS501 installation instructions. These are linked to down below. Other references to the PS501 are here as well. They've got a pair of ED900 doors, which are low-energy automatic operators. Obviously being powered by a PS901. You've got exit devices that are here. This would be a, well, this drawing would be a elevation drawing. It would be a point-to-point wiring diagram as well. So the point of me showing this to you is that other resources for further review and research might be something appropriate for you to dive into. Let's wrap up this video on camera. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. In conclusion, if you have any questions on the Dorma PS501 Power Supply, please feel free to reach out to us. Not too much to really talk about. There's not a lot of instances where you're probably going to use this power supply. You're probably going to be using it with a 9000 series exit device or with Dorma electromagnetic locks. You know, one school of thought I like to use is the power supply. Whoever is manufacturing the hardware, I like to use their power supply because I don't want to have a concern over warranty. I have heard that an issue, that has been an issue at some point where something doesn't work, and now manufacturers are saying, well, you're not using it with the equipment we've tested. So I like to stick with a single manufacturer through when it comes to that. And, you know, the bottom line is there are so many different manufacturers who make electrified hardware, access control hardware, and everybody has all the same stuff. They all have key switches and keypads and electromagnetic locks and electric strikes and the ability to have exit devices and mortise locks and cylindrical locks with all sorts of monitoring. So within anyone's ecology, you know, anyone's sphere, their bubble of their universe, you'll be able to make, you know, pretty much everything happen. The other side that I've heard is that, you know, if this person's power supply is $10 less, we're going to use those. Well, I'd be tempted to want to maintain my warranty, especially when it comes to electrified hardware, as it's expensive and it's costly to troubleshoot. And you want to make sure, in my opinion, that you've got everything buttoned up. I know this client has 9000 series exit devices, and they're using the power supply that the factory says, here's the one that you've got to use, basically. Okay, good quality tech support folks over at Dorma 2. I've called there a number of times, and there's one gentleman there who, in particular, is quite exceptional. Absolutely will dig until he finds the complete, full, professional, expert answer. And to him, I say thank you very much. Any questions on the PS501 Power Supply by Dorma or any other Dorma product, please feel free to reach out. Thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up, please subscribe, and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.